Independent bookstores are in trouble. Comic book stores are in trouble. Comic book stores are taking aid from the Book Industry Charitable Foundation. They're trying to kind of keep these stores alive. But Publishers Weekly's got an interesting story. Bookstores need more than hope. They need sales and soon. And of course, they need more than handouts, or they need to close up. With competition like Amazon.com and publishers like me even selling direct to consumer, that's kind of the future. You know, if you're not some massive online operation, that's where things are going. That, and they've always had to compete with libraries anyway. You know, how do you compete with the books available for free in the library? So, I mean, if people want to own the book, they want to own the book. But if you want to own the book, you don't really drive out to a bookstore to go get it. It's nice to be able to go to a bookstore. It's a cool ambiance. You get to like look through different things, maybe even meet a stranger when you go to the bookstore. That's great. But that's all kind of ruined now as competition has taken so much business away from independent stores, bookstores, comic stores, really all kinds of stores. But now with the friggin' pandemic, so much stuff is shut down and closed up, and there's so much restrictions on these stores. They can't barely even do any business. So here's the article. Bookstores need more than hope. They need sales, and soon. Despite offering expanded service, stores enter the fourth quarter worried about forces beyond their control. Because as much as business has always been a challenge for these stores, especially in the last few years, you don't hear about your friend Jeff that got super rich opening a bookstore, unless his name is Jeff Bezos, okay? That's not the typical small bookstore type of operation. Amazon.com, it's a little bit different. This is a nice picture of Book Club, a bookstore and wine bar at the Lower East Side, New York City. Opened its doors November 2019, but of course they're struggling now like a mother. Let's get into the article. Before we do, subscribe to the channel if you want to help me and click the bell for notifications. I appreciate it. Now, over more than 6 months of extreme disruption, the nation's independent bookstores have steadily grown in their businesses beyond the four walls. A Publishers Weekly survey of 36 independent stores nationwide found most offering some combination of online sales, curbside pickup, home delivery, outdoor browsing, and in-store shopping. So they're trying. The diversity of sales channels reflects a substantial expansion of retail customer service as they navigate evolving market conditions caused by the pandemic, but also caused apparently by climate change. I mean, these guys are in New York City. What climate change is affecting this bookstore? But even if they're located in California, the wildfires, I don't know. That's a whole other video. More than 80% of bookstore surveys are now open for some form of limited in-store browsing. I guess the ones that are not out of business, right? With appointments or other measures to ensure that they abide by state capacity guidelines. Of the shops that are not open to in-store browsing, all have online ordering, and most are offering curbside pickup and outdoor browsing. Well, I mean, they're at least trying to stay in business. That's good. That level of customer service reflects an unparalleled modernization of independent bookselling, but the question on the minds of booksellers is whether their efforts will be enough to combat forces beyond their control. They will not, for the most part, because obviously the deck is stacked against these guys. You don't have publishers coming out to support bookstores. You don't have government particularly coming out to support independent businesses very much. You had the payment protection plan. That was good. But that's all temporary. And there are potentially tax implications of the payment protection program because the money that they get as loans to pay payroll and some other business expenses, when those loans are canceled, it's considered income, so they kind of owe income taxes on those loans. It gets a little complicated. I heard they're disputing it. We'll see how that turns out. But bookstores and comic book stores are in some trouble. Nearly all expressed apprehension about the supply chain as the holiday season approaches, especially if titles sell out and need to be reprinted rapidly. Our concern is less about a glut of titles coming to market. They don't have to worry about a glut of titles coming to market because publishers are freaking out about putting their books out, especially returnable books. What are you going to do? You print a hell of a lot of extra books as a publisher on a returnable basis and then just pass them out to these bookstores, a huge percentage of which are going to go out of business, another percentage of which are not even allowed to open their doors So yeah, they're going to have very short printed quantities around. A lot of stuff's going to sell out and not be available, except if you buy it online. Why? Because at online you have centralized distribution in theoretically all one place. It's in a couple of major chunks of areas, and that kind of protects whoever's selling online from, okay, if there's no demand in Arizona, there might be demand in Florida, there could be demand in Texas, so you can afford to stock up a little bit. But these independent stores can't. It's rough times. It's rough times. So our concern is less about a glut of titles and more about delays in this publishing supply chain and a clogged process of reorders on titles that take off at retail unexpectedly, which does normally happen. You know, sometimes there's a hit. A hit is a hit. You can never predict a hit. You can see something that feels like it's good and seems like it's good and it might take off, but there's no guarantee. Whatever people want at the time, consumer tastes, random things, take off, boom, that's it. You never know. So there's no way for them to predict. And of course, they're going to wind up with shortages of what would otherwise be very profitable books. Like many booksellers, Hall emphasized that he doesn't blame publishers. Well, with capacity limited, we understand that publishers' abilities to recalibrate what's getting printed, bound, and shipped are going to be under strain, he said. Still, the undercut of worry is an indication of how much hinges on a steady supply of books in the coming months. Even with expanded options for customers, booksellers are deeply concerned about overall economic uncertainty, with many expecting flat sales in the fourth quarter at best. Well, from what I've heard, just so you know, we're expecting a big Christmas. Everybody's kind of expecting a big Christmas who does this kind of analysis. But we'll see. But that's not going to help them if they don't have the books to sell. The drop-off of in-person events and limitations on in-store browsing create constraints at a time of year when packed stores have been the norm. We assume fall will be largely as it's been since we reopened the physical store in mid-July, said David Sandberg, co-owner of Porter Square Books in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is the Publishers Weekly 2020 Bookstore of the Year. They're even in trouble, the Bookstore of the Year. The main worry is how we will manage the holidays since we're restricting the physical store to 10 customers at a time. That's absurd. And while we expand our open hours in October and then again in December, it won't be nearly enough to accommodate what would normally be our holiday traffic. So where they might normally have 150 or 200 customers in their store, they're going to be limited to 10, which means in the middle of winter in Massachusetts, which means forget about it. You're going to lose a fortune of money. Their sales will be off probably by 60, 70%, which is terrible. Many booksellers also worry that another rise in the stupid pandemic virus cases could lead to a second wave of mandatory closures. Yes, it could. We are hopeful but guarded about the fall, says Gail Shanks, co-owner of Changing Hand Bookstores in Phoenix, Arizona. How did I know Arizona was coming into this? We hope to be able to stay open. We hope that we'll be able to get important books shipped to us in a timely way. We hope our staff is safe, but we also know that the numbers of cases could spike again, and we may have to close to the public once again. Yes, you may. At the Yankee, kind of makes it a terrible business, right? Who would open a bookstore right now? Or any kind of physical retail store? Certainly nobody's opening restaurants. The one good thing about all restaurants being closed and a lot of restaurants going out of business is many people actually do go into the restaurant business, and many restaurants do normally fail. So all the restaurants that otherwise would have opened that didn't open because all the restaurants were shut down, well, you know, they didn't waste their money. They didn't get shut down. They didn't lose their new businesses. So less new business failures. That's the positive way you got to look at it. At the Yankee Bookshop in Woodstock, Vermont, also in the Northeast, co-owner Christian Prelowski said sales have held steady, which gives him hope, but added that all of that could disappear if a resurgence leads to more lockdowns. You should be doing a lot email and stuff, like get your email addresses to your customers, Christiane. Do it online. Create a newsletter. Direct to consumer is where it's at. That's the only thing that the world is going to allow anymore, apparently. There are always going to be stores, of course, but this kind of small businesses cannot take this type of interruption. They can't just say, oh, well, this cost us an extra $1 billion. Oh, well, we lost an extra $200,000 this year. We'll make it up another year. We'll just write it off our taxes. Small businesses are not in a position to do that. Big businesses can do that as much as they want. Amazon.com was losing money every year while it was growing for, 10 or 15 years? Losing money, millions of dollars. And then they turned it around. Small businesses can't do that. That's another one of the advantages small businesses don't have, is they don't have the backing, they don't have the resources. The uncertainty about the future, coupled with the fact that the pandemic is no longer a short-term emergency, is exhausting some booksellers. In Boston's North End decided it's too much. He's completely online. Good for you. That's the smart thing to do. You must have control of your business. Your business must be manageable. So this guy, Nicola Orichuya, from IM Books, decided to close his books in Massachusetts. We all love Massachusetts and the Northeast, but he closed his bookstore. He's going completely online. He wasn't confident sales would pick up. He decided to close the physical store. That is a smart guy, but unfortunately, that's what everyone's being forced to do. Now, this gentleman, Ted Linhart, please don't bother him, but he had an interesting comment, so I want to read his comment. I'm a big fan of Publishers Weekly, particularly because most of the time they report on what is happening without falling into the media laziness of articles that are simply speculations about the negative things that could happen and prey on people's fears and anxieties. That is what this article does. This article could easily have been about the innovative ways smart booksellers are preparing for the holidays instead of reporting their fears and worries, or the positive things that can happen if cases get lower. This is truly useless reporting that represents the laziest form of media writing today. Let's think of all the things that can go wrong and talk about that with the people. Well, definitely, I want you to put in the comments below if you agree with this guy, Ted. Here's what I have to say about Ted. I think he means well, and I like optimism and positivity and enthusiasm. That's one of my big things, enthusiasm. But where Ted gets it wrong is no, there are people that are making decisions about their life and their business now. So pretending that there aren't some serious risks in business, if you don't know the risks in business, you're going to have a big problem. You have to evaluate what all of the risks are and be prepared for all of the risks. Wonderful, positive things can always happen. Sometimes you can, if these guys are bookstore sellers, right? So as a bookseller, you can get a hit. The new Dogman comes in. Here it is, Dogman, Grime and Punishment. Huge seller, big seller, had a 5 million print run. Maybe you get an order from a local, toy store or something, and they're like, hey, we want to buy 100 copies promotionally. You make it easy, $500 or something like that. That's great. That's great. Maybe you happen to find out that, oh my God, I live down the street from Dave Pickley. Or maybe Adam Post is my uncle. Would he come and do a signing at my store along with Dave Pickley one day? Then we could sell 10,000 books all in one day and make all this money. Sometimes those things happen. So it is good to look at the sunny side, but to not talk about reality, where even the bookstore of the year for Publishers Weekly is actually concerned about being able to stay in business because, he's their choice number one guy for this book industry publication, Publishers Weekly, and even he's worried about the future because there are things that are happening beyond his control. The purpose of this article was to let people know that bookstores have to figure out how to sell books. It is no effing joke. Same with comic stores. They need to figure out what they're going to do, and immediately. And if they don't, they will not exist. So I don't agree with Ted. I think the purpose of this article was to exactly do this. Now, this guy, Michael Perry, has a good suggestion. He talks about a different format for a bookstore called Third Place Books. There's a link to it. I'm going to put a link to this article in the video like I always do anyway. But, so he makes a positive suggestion. And there's nothing wrong making positive suggestions. But the point of this article was reality check, reality check, reality check. Bookstores are in trouble. And anyone thinking about opening a bookstore should be very aware of these things. Anybody who's got a bookstore, who's making plans, who's making investments, or you have a small business, you ought to be thinking about all these things. And it's good for them to be brought to your attention. And things are very risky right now in physical retail locations. They're not good businesses. You should stay the hell away from them altogether until the whole narrative of whatever this gigantic health event actually is is over. And that may be a year, it may be 3 months, it may be 2 years. I don't know. But people should be aware. This is how bad it is for comic stores. And I'm glad these people got help. But this BINC Distributing, Book Industry Charitable Foundation, BINC distributing over $950,000 to comic stores. So they're helping comic stores. They're donating cash to comic stores. You know what? Good for them. They're getting anywhere from $800 to $2,400 per store. Previous to that, they distributed $174,786 to comic stores as well for additional relief, and that's great. So they're being charitable. It's fantastic. And even now they're saying, hey, we are encouraging comic retailers to reach out to them for financial assistance. Very nice, very good people. But this is a broke, dead industry, the physical comic book store industry. And that it tells you that even more so. I don't know. Tell me what you think. To me, this is an important story to cover. Put it in the comments below. Definitely subscribe to the channel because it's a huge help to me. Click the bell for notifications. You can also check out my work and support me at collegeofthedead.com. And check out my ongoing zombie apocalypse series, College of the Dead. Book 1 and Book 2 are in print. They ship immediately. Also, you can sign up at epicmermaids.com so that you can get on the email list for The Mermaids. It's of course, a free email list. It'll let you know when The Mermaids is ready to be released. It's an ongoing series. It's like Game of Thrones with mermaids. It's full color. It's really well written. The artwork is beautiful. And I am really, really excited to be publishing it this month, October 2020. I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.